As to your question about the building, there are a number of commissions that the governor appoints. Many of them are unpaid, and the only payment they get is reimbursement for travel when they do meet. So I don't want you to have the impression that 5 people on a commission that meet 3 times a year are all getting 6-figure salaries. There are executive agencies where, as an example, the commissioner of TxDOT and his board, there are 5 of those folks, but there's an executive director that does the day-to-day work that has the substantial salary, not the commission. The Texas Veterans Commission, there are commission members with an executive director. There's the Texas Mortuary Affairs Board for morticians. There's a group of folks that provide counsel and an executive director that they direct. So, as to specifically which one you're addressing in the building, but I don't want you to have the impression that Texas has folks out there that are, sitting twiddling their thumbs and collecting 6-figure salaries for 3 days worth of work.
That's a federal government.
Yeah, that's. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to clarify something about the transportation bill that you voted for. So basically, what you're saying as far as the toll road goes is that the highways in Texas, because you don't want to build toll roads because that money cannot be used for toll roads, correct?
Right. The constitutional amendment that we're trying to finalize precludes TxDOT from taking on more debt or using that money to build toll roads.
So in effect then, what we're voting on the amendment is that current highways that we currently have in Texas could eventually possibly become toll roads in order to build.
No. In fact, we passed a bill that Senator Campbell sponsored. Ben, you remember the numbers?
1029.
1029 that specifically precluded current state public roads from ever transcending to toll roads.
In part or whole. We voted that this
Yes,
session.
that was approved. Wasn't that approved early on in session, Ben?
What's that?
Wasn't that approved early on in session?
Fairly
March.
early. Fairly early, yeah.
Early.
September.
Oh, yes, sir.
I drove for the largest trucking company for 5 years, and over 80% of their fleet, you said vehicle registration was a good provider for taxes?
No, I didn't say it was a good provider. So that's one of the 3 ways we collect dollars for roads.
80% of their fleet was registered out of the state of Oklahoma for the fact that they had one of the cheapest registrations. Is anybody doing anything to try to lure trucking companies to register their tractors and trailers to the state of Texas?
The best way to do that, financially incentivizing them, is to lower the fee. And you come to that regression analysis that in the free market, yeah, to incentivize people to come do that. But if I lower it to a point that I get everybody to come here, I've got the traffic, but I'm collecting actually even less dollars. I don't want to sit here and say that all government money is all money's government. But I've had to vote against things in Veterans Affairs Committee that we're going to do this for veterans. That I knew that if we did that, we would incentivize people to move to Texas, pay no property taxes or other things that we give for Texas veterans. That you end up, demand goes up, influx of revenue to support that demand goes way down. And at some point, you just cannot incentivize what you know is an economic model that can't be.
The reason why I ask is because a lot of the times the 18-wheelers never even make it into the state that they're registered in.
Oh, yeah. And Oklahoma's, what, fourth the size of Texas?
Gordon?
I had a question regarding when you had that graph up there. That constitutional amendment will take care of a lot of the roads. But what we're seeing when we looked at the TxDOT maps is virtually every new highway in Texas is a toll road. When you look at their maps, like the I-9 that's coming through North Ellis County, they're all toll roads.
Right.
So how do we, I think most people would agree to raise a little bit of gas tax rather than have every highway in Texas tolled, or every new highway. And what happened, for example, this is where it runs amok. the North Dallas Tollway, remember what it was supposed to be? As soon as it got paid for and it built up a maintenance fund, it was supposed to, toll was supposed to go away.
Yeah, like the old Dallas Fort Worth Turnpike, they're 30.
They never go away, and so what's happened is it seems like the toll roads, especially with these foreign companies, they're not debt players anymore like the state would be, they're equity players. So when you
Well,
do,
TxDOT,
when you do an equity deal,
yeah.
the cost is always infinite.
There were a couple of things that we did in 1730 that to make sure that toll roads were not going to get abused the way they have been, because TxDOT was actually, Senator Nichols and I talked about this, he's the chair of transportation in the Senate, that TxDOT was making some really bad deals and extending contracts for purchase and just keep extending to the point of the state never actually taking possession or owning the road. It would be, maybe a drug addict and a drug dealer would be the best example of the addict never breaks the addiction. The state never broke the addiction of, or TxDOT never broke the addiction of, well, let's just let them keep doing it with a toll road, and that way we can take the dollars that we should have to that road and operate it as a free state road. Again, you get back to that problem of not enough money for preservation, but then you end up in the political dilemma of, do I want to be the guy standing up and saying raise the gas tax? I mean, I don't really want to be that guy. There are folks that are looking at, well, instead of a gas tax, let's do an odometer tax. Because
Not in Texas.
well, it's what's happening in California.
But at the same
Because
time,
you got the Priuses and all the, the hybrids, that the number of miles being driven on the road is not matching the old 60s, 70s model, how many gallons you're using to do so. So we're not putting in nearly as much by gallon into the road system as is being driven on it. That's what's causing that.
well,
For us, that
but
delta
you still got
don't work.
more cars and more gas being sold. But the real issue is you're raiding that fund for education, which it shouldn't be done.
No, we're not rating an education fund, no.
Sure you are. 5 cents of the transportation money, or the gas tax money, is going into education.
Right, we're not rating education.
No, I'm saying you're raiding the transportation fund,
Oh, okay.
where you don't get a true picture of what's really going on and what you really need.
Right.
So you can't figure it out. And now what we're left with is all these toll roads that everybody objects to. And where's the political pressure coming from to keep building these toll roads? When the people don't really want them.
The political pressure comes from 3 areas. Given what you just said, I'll name a few of them for you that immediately come to mind. Imagine the political ramifications of standing up in front of y'all and saying, I want to raise your gas tax. Imagine the political ramifications of standing up and saying, you know that 5 cents a gallon that was going into education? I want to take that away and put it back into transportation. Because there is a very large education arena that screams and hollers more. I want the best education for the people of the state of Texas that we can absolutely provide, but at the least cost.
Homeschool.
Well, I mean, but Article 7, Section 1 of the state constitution says that I have to have a system of free public schools. Now, it's free to the kids, not to the taxpayers. But the point is that, and then you've got y'all sitting in traffic. If in 2001, we just said, okay, given the numbers of dollars that we have coming into the state treasury, only allow us to do X in the way of preservation of current roads, building no new ones. For the last 12 years, you'd be sitting in traffic, particularly in counties like Ellis, Johnson, Collin, Denton. Anybody been to Harris? I mean, when I lived in Beaumont, Harris was always the land of perpetual construction. Those areas that are in the major metropolitan areas, Austin, San Antonio, Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, Corpus, the Interstate 35, Interstate 45, Interstate 10 corridor is making serious demands on the needs for both our commerce and our commuter traffic moving back and forth. Those are the 3 political pressures that are having to be balanced. You know, when I talked to Senator Nichols, he had a town hall similar to this, and I'll be done in just he had a town hall similar to this, and he was, you voted for toll roads. I'm like, I don't like toll roads, but I don't like you sitting in traffic for decades on end either. This is part of the reason that you'll see the SJR, that if we can get it structure, because the House is making some amendments to it that we'll have to go to conference and figure out how we're gonna do this. That will take some dollars, put it against transportation. It's not gonna solve that delta. If we put, what was it, Ben, at current rate, flow rates off the severance tax, what, 1.5 billion?
1.8, about 900 million a year.
About 900 million a year, 1.8 in a biennium into transportation. That 1.8 is not going to cover that between income and preservation and new roads, but it'll start to pay that down. It'll let us use some of the other transportation dollars to pay down that debt and gradually start weaning that 22 billion down while still preserving our roads and very slowly adding some capacity till we can have a more permanent solution. Those are the pressures that are on us, and one of the reasons the governor and the legislature were so adamant about we will not expand Medicaid, and we're not going to sign up for the exchanges, and a number of things. Cody? Paul?
Well, I think outside of Austin, this might sound reasonable. When John Conley was governor, the sales tax in this state was 2 or 3 cents. I think it was more like 2 cents. Now it's what, 6 point something cents?
8.
It's
It depends on
eight
which
in
county,
town,
but
but
8
yeah.
roughly, up to 8.2 in Granbury.
Right, but I mean, it's like the state part of it is like.
Right, state part 6 something.
And, you know, we subsidize at the state level because money is transferred around and played with in the school districts. These professional quality football stadiums, which are often a big part of the school budget.
Yeah.
Now, that's just one example of something that wasn't going on earlier, that doesn't have to go on. I received a better education in Midlothian, Texas, when it was barely a 2A district, when it was barely a 2A school district, than you could get in Midlothian, Texas today, unless you were a really elite student. And that's a good school district. And I think we need to rethink the whole process.
Well, Commissioner, the education challenges that we face are a mixture of 2 different authorities dealing with our schools. As an example, in Granbury, there's going to be a ballot, a proposition on the ballot for the school to go from grass field to AstroTurf. Most of the stadiums that are built, most of the high-end buildings are a function of 2 things. Either you have a very property wealthy district and the voters will vote for it because it's cost, I don't say neutral, but not as difficult or not a difficult cross to bear. And hey, I want this for, this kind of stadium. I mean, yeah, I've driven by some stadiums and I'm like, that looks like a small college.
Midlothian.
Midlothian's more.
You know, and what I'm
You've been
saying,
there.
and Senator, I'm interrupting, but let me get this
No,
point
no,
across.
we're having a conversation.
Yeah. What I want to get the point across is those school districts that choose to spend that money that way, and you know how with the convoluted accounting.
Shouldn't come back to the state and say, give me more.
Yeah, and what we ought to do is put them on a state financing diet.
That's right.
One of the things that was done it was one of the good things in the budget. Part of the challenge that we face statewide is the lawsuit that we're in right now, where there are a little over 1,000 school districts in the state of Texas, and almost 2/3 of them are suing the state for more money. Because we've got basically 2 kinds of funding. We've got Article 41, Article 42 funding, which is essentially hold harmless funding and formula funding. If we can get everybody into formula funding so that whether you have 100 students or 1,000 students, there's a flat rate for every student that you get. Here's your dollars that meet the minimum standard of what the state says. Here's what it takes to walk across the stage and be an adult before the law, ready to go achieve your American dream. Then we've treated everybody equally, whether you're in Brewster County, whether you're in Hill County, whether you're in Somerville, I mean, I can't tell you the number of folks that always throw Somerville at me with Glen Rose because of the nuclear plant. Have you driven by, I mean, they've got a brand basketball stadium that looks like, you know, a college. I mean, but their property base is the nuclear plant. And then I've got schools in other districts that don't have that kind of property. There's no way the state can bring every school district to a property wealthy standard.
Right.
Can't do it.
It's not the state's job.
It's not, yeah, it's not, there's no way I can do that. What we have to fund is say, here's the standard for graduating from high school. Whether you're in Hill County, Ellis County, Falls County, and the number of students you have, here are the dollars. And it's equitable across the state, that one, that'll get us out of court. So part of the reason for those dollars going back into education, I thought we went too far. It was good to put money back in to get us into formula funding and out of the hold harmless. Get into formula funding so that it's, how many students you got? 100? Each student's worth $2,500, here's your check. How many students you got? Here's your,
Right.
that's what we're trying to get to.
Cool.
And how do I do that?
Take time. Take time. But
Next month.
School starts again in September.
so, let me do, can I do one more and then,
I want one.
oh, you want one? Okay.
There's one
Okay.
more.
All
Is
right.
there anybody else? Okay, go ahead.
Senator Birdwell,
Yes, sir.
I appreciate what you do in Austin.
Thank you, sir.
You're talking about these topics, and you're talking about two topics here that just cry out for serious reform: transportation and education. And you know, at the end of the day, what we need are politicians running for statewide office who are going to talk about the reforms that we need to do. And of course, you're probably aware of Terry Hall from Texas United for Reform and Freedom has talked for years about the reform of tech stock that we need. And then on the other hand, there's some of us that believe that the government should not be in the business of owning and operating the schools. That's why you have bad schools. We need statewide politicians proposing real reform in these areas. And my question is, do you agree?
On the tech stock piece, definitely agree. Part of the little deeper oversight, because part of the reason we have the debt circumstance we do is tech stock was taking X number of dollars and leveraging it to make it, okay, if I've got $1 billion, let me turn it into a $3 billion loan. And that's part of the reason our debt has exploded. Part of the reason they do that isn't just, you know, we can turn it into $3 billion, but I can do more in the way of roads with $3 billion than I can with $1 billion. Most citizens will recognize the quality of the education their kids are getting or not, and are engaged in that. Your only real way to determine tech stocks doing their job or not is how many orange barrels are you going by on 35, and you're seeing the progress. Or if you're not seeing construction, you're stuck in traffic. I mean, the first time I was supposed to meet Dan, there was a wreck on 35 South, and I sat on that loop right there at just off of where JFK was shot for almost an hour. We weren't moving. When you have those events, you're like, what the hell? I mean, it's not just rush hour, but the point is, with a growing state, there's some things we can do in Texas. The state ownership of schools, the state does not own per se. Let's just say here in Waxahachie, Waxahachie Independent School District. Article 7, Section 1 of the state constitution, though, requires that a general diffusion of knowledge being necessary for a secure state, the state legislature shall make provision for a system of free and equitable schools. And we are in court on what is equitable constantly. And adequate. And what definition of equitable, what definition of adequate. But ultimately, the only way you could privatize schooling in the state is a constitutional amendment that would say, get rid of public schools, and you think the political pressure of toll roads, education, and raising taxes is bad. Because, I mean, just, like I said, here's the state budget in a pie. Here's education, and that constitution includes higher ed, so you're not just talking K through 12, you're talking 4-year, 2-year, and like TSTC, and then 2-year community college. This is Medicaid, which is about 30%. This is 45 to 48%, and that leaves you 20 to 25% for your judiciary, courts, public safety like DPS, water. I mean, this has been what's been shrinking that, and it's been shrinking education. That's. I'm sorry. 2 more questions. You said right? Okay. Okay. Yes, sir.
Well, I'm new. That was the first time I ever been one.
Well, who?
All my kids are grown. I've got grandkids. What I want to know is,
Aren't they great?
Yeah, they're
Because they
great.
go
Send
home.
them home, sugar.
Sure.
I think part of the drain on the education system is leaks. You know, I saw my granddaughter in a school that had 3 kindergarten level bilingual classes, so she couldn't do it. You know, I see the pictures from Canada and some of the others where they come across the border with their lunchboxes, go there.
Yeah, in El Paso, you have people that are attending a school in Texas that the school district cannot tax because they live in another country.
Why?
Yep.
Why?
The Constitution says the national mandate of security is on the federal government.
Right. It is.
Why are they not doing it?
As to why they're not doing it, would you like a brief history lesson? I am dead serious, folks. I mean, I have to be back in Austin tonight, but I'll spend 30 minutes with you talking about this. This was personal to me. And it's personal because I wear the scars of 19 people coming into this country, violating their visas, and not one of them was Hispanic.
OTM.
It does not matter to me what color you are. It matters to me that your loyalty to this nation. Let me, you mind if I draw a little bit here? Everybody remember what happened in 1986? First amnesty, well. I PCS from Korea back to the United States. What happened in 1986 was Simpson, Mazzoli, first amnesty, you remember? Okay. And we supposedly said we're going to amnesty 3 million. And there were a bunch of, I'm sure we'll get. What happened prior to 1986 that caused 3 million people to be here illegally? Anybody recognize?
What is that?
No. In 1981, the SCOTUS, which stands for Supreme Court of the United States, gave us the Plyler versus Texas ruling. Prior to 1981, Texas and many other states did not provide any taxpayer benefit to unlawfully present aliens. The state of Texas was sued, lost in the Supreme Court, and because it was a Supreme Court decision, not an appellate decision, it applied to the entire United States that said any person residing in the state of Texas or in the United States, government was required under the equal protection of the 14th Amendment to provide taxpayer benefits to anybody that came and made a demand for it. That's a very generalization of what the Supreme Court did. When that happened, what the Supreme Court did to us was incentivize everybody to say, let's go. 5 years later, we've got so many, we decide to amnesty. The problem with the Supreme Court's thought process was that when they said equal protection of the law, too many folks have used the equal protection clause of the 14th Amendment to equally protect different types of conduct. It is not constitutional to equally protect illegal activity. And yet that's what the court did. And so in that 5 years, after it was, Katie bar the door, let the floodgates open, something else happened in 1981 in Texas. And that was the property tax system went from being your tax assessor collector, who was an elected official that set your tax rates, to appraisal districts. Where do you get that? Where the taxing authorities say, here's who we're going to put on the board, and then the taxing authorities will say, here's the rate. The appraisal district says, here's the value of your property, and you're mad at both, and each of them tell you to see the other. That happened in 1981. When that happened, those two things, you see in 1982, what did you see? I worked as a custodian for my local school district in 1982 to put myself through school in Beaumont at Lamar University. My job, when I was cleaning buildings, putting myself through school, was to go clean the what? The portable buildings.
Yay, we got 'em.
Because guess what? We didn't have the money to build the numbers of buildings that were permanent, so we had what? Portable buildings out the wazoo. And that's where we still are.
That's because we allowed the Supreme Court to think it's the final decision, and we don't have nullification.
That's right. That's right. Let me square you away here.
I knew somebody else would bring it up.
Okay, are you familiar with Article 3 of the U.S. Constitution?
One about ordering troops.
No.
Article
Not Amendment 3.
Article 3, remember, Article 1 is what? Legislative. Article 2 is?
Executive.
Article 3 is? Judiciary. Which of those is the shortest? Article 3. But there is a specified power in Article 3 given to the Congress. It says, in all cases affecting ambassadors, other public ministers and consuls, and those in which a state shall be a party, the Supreme Court shall have original jurisdiction. Period. In all other cases before mentioned, the Supreme Court shall have appellate jurisdiction, both as to law and fact. And here's your nullification paragraph. With such exceptions and under such regulations as the Congress may make. The supreme branch of government is the legislative branch. It is not the judicial. And until we have a legislative branch that will check the judicial, this is the tyranny we'll live on.
Yeah, and I agree with that, and that's what I was talking about. That's what we agree on.
Yeah, Bill.
Okay, all right. You got your Constitution.
Yeah.
This is not state. Well, it is state. Article 5.
Constitutional Convention?
32 states had, now there's 29 states, have a standing call for a constitutional convention to, there's different points in the different states, but to rein in the out-of-control federal government. Do you have a position with it? Texas is one of the 29.
Well, I don't know that it has a standing.
It does.
Well,
Okay, all right.
Standing would mean we want a constitutional convention.
What it's called.
Whatever.
We just want one. Last session, we had a call for a constitutional convention, but it called for 4 topics.
Okay.
Most constitutional convention calls of the states are specific to a particular issue they want addressed, as opposed to, when you say standing, I think you mean in general as to at all times and any subject.
Okay, I'm against that. I'm
That's
for-
what I think you mean when you say
Okay,
standing.
all right, okay. I guess, okay, my question is, what are the points that Texas is putting up? And what's your position on the points?
Well, on the points, I wanted to address them. The problem with Article 5 is that it doesn't specify, nor does federal law, because we've only had one constitutional convention, which was the first one. It does not specify how the delegates are gathered, what the authorities of the delegates are as to what can, when we did the one last session, I voted against it because while I liked a federal balanced budget, border security, and other things, the procedures with which we would get there, the scope and the bounds of what could be heard, I didn't want to have a constitutional convention that once you convene, even though it was for these four things, I don't want some jackwagon from California going, we're going to get rid of the Second Amendment. And the Constitution is silent on the structure of a constitutional convention. So in asking for it, while the sentiment is there, that's like crossing the line of departure without rules of engagement, and you're not sure what you're going to run into. So that's why I've been concerned. But I think I will clearly agree to this, Bill. I think we are nearing a point where it's not going to matter because the times are getting so desperate. That it may just be, we'll just take that risk.
Is that
But I don't know if we're there.
session?
Why not
Are you in favor of a constitutional convention prior to the idea of Texas succeeding to their own again?
Texas does
That's
not
another
have,
question, you don't have to answer it.
yeah, Texas doesn't have the ability to secede. There's not a lawful way to secede.
I didn't say lawful. I didn't mention that word.
But that's,
I didn't mention that word.
well, I do, but you're right. Texas secedes, it'll be at the business end of the banner.
What, why wouldn't you want a constitutional convention now before the House possibly does allow all this amnesty stuff come through, and also you have all these former illegals voting in all these horrible representatives to office to where you'll never get another Republican, and then all of a sudden you have all these people that are just controlled to have whatever liberal agenda they want.
Because we need 3/4 of the states to confirm what some idiot in California wants to have.
Well, you have to have 2/3 if the Congress is the one that sends it to the states. If it develops in the Congress, you have to have 2/3 of both bodies.
Right.
Or 3/4 of the states have to call for a constitutional convention, ratify the amendments that are proposed by 4/5 of the states. So you have to have 39 of the states ratify what 34 states say you want.
It's a mess.
It is not taken lightly. But that's why, your point is why that was a hard vote, because the issues that our last session in 11 asked for in that constitutional convention request were very serious. But the manner in how we would get there, how would the delegates be convened, chosen, what amendments would the scope be beyond what we asked for, particularly if 34 states asked for a constitutional convention, but all the states asked for different items. There's nothing in the Constitution or, my understanding from my general counsel, federal law, that reduces or limits the scope of what can be heard. And in fact, in Article 5, it says that the convention is gathered to make recommendations for amendments. The convention doesn't approve them. Congress does. The convention actually puts them together. How do you control the scope to ensure that the things that we love about the Constitution aren't damaged while we're trying to fix what is damaged? So that's been let me build your question. Or was that it?
Yeah, that was my question. Article 5,
Okay.
the states' rights to rein in the federal government.
Well, the states, may I be more specific as to what you just said? Prior to the 17th Amendment, the states had a greater ability to rein in the federal government because the Senate belonged to the states.
That's right.
I, as a state legislator, short of the Tea Party movement in '09 and '10, state legislators had a greater purview of understanding. Sorry, I'm being destructive over here. The state legislatures had a greater purview of the requirements the federal government was placing upon the state. When the U.S. senators were chosen by the legislature, just give you an example. Everybody loves Ted Cruz. Look, if Senator Cruz came down and said, Obamacare is a great thing, prior to the 17th Amendment being enacted, I, as a state legislator representing you, could say, thank you, Senator Cruz, for your interest in the health care of Texans. You're fired. And now, in firing him, does that change the vote he cast? No. But it means I get to 1 vote out of 31 on the Senate side, 1 vote out of 181 total, that choose who goes to the Senate to protect the state of Texas from the federal government. With the 17th Amendment, the protections of the states went from being the state legislator's duty to yours.
So we have a
If it were
6-year
the old way,
representative.
David Dewhurst would be our senator.
Say that again, ma'am?
If it were the old way, David Dewhurst would be our senator.
Could be. Could be.
Well, the people.
Y'all did, I mean, you did a great job choosing Ted Cruz.
And
The
you,
problem is you got
yes.
49 other states that you got to do this with. But damn it, at least we've taken the first step, you know? But the point is that the founders understood that the sentiment would be that the Senate, its primary purpose was to protect state sovereignty, while the House was to deal with the mood of the people. Those would balance themselves, but once we ratified the 17th Amendment back in 1911, we turned the U.S. Senate into the same thing the U.S. House was, except there's fewer people in it.
Actually, we gutted the 10th Amendment with the 17th. When you stop and think about it from that point of view, you gutted it.
You negated the enforcement of it. Now it's up to the individual discipline and fidelity of the people you elect to federal office to live up to the 10th Amendment. Rather than having the vote in the state legislature that says, thank you for your service, you're no longer needed.
Senator,
Yeah.
thank you.
Cool, thank you. Appreciate it.
Senator Birdwell, we thank you very much. We would have liked to have spent several more hours asking inquisiting Senator.
Is this the Tea Party Inquisition?
You got off very lightly.
Oh, I did? I got off lightly. Oh, man.
Write the senator. He will answer your letters. Call the senator's office in Austin, and he's very accessible, I believe.
Well, I spent 2 hours with you at that Sonic, too.
Yeah.
Two and a half?
Yeah.
Oh, my man.
How about the tea?
He bought me a soda.
It's been my treat to be with you guys. Thank you again, and hoo-ah.
Okay, in an effort to move things along, we're gonna delay Hugh's presentation since it's already 7:30. And you've been very polite for the last hour and a half, so we're gonna cut it a little bit short. Treasurer's report is we have $165.50, so we're semi-rich. As always, it costs us about $130 a month to stay in business. And tonight, we'd like to raise some more money, and Penny Story, for anybody that gives her more than $10, she has a book. Do you want to describe it very quickly what it is?
Yes, this is a book called The People, that's us, the preachers, there are some in here, and the politicians, and there's some in here. And this is the combination of what makes America great, and we all participate in our government, written by Dan Cummins, who is a pastor, and he is involved in politics, knowing, not personally running or anything. But this also comes from the story in the Bible that shows us how those three should live. An excellent book, an easy read, and if you care to give $10 to the donation tonight. Look, they're excellent.
With that, we've got several office holders and candidates that we'll give a minute or two. Paul, would you like to bring up some speed on? Go ahead and pass the hat while we're doing this.
Where's the hat?
If you give the $10, just come
If you
see
get the
me.
$10 and we
Put a light in there and crush this hat. I'll find out, don't worry about it. You can have a bet free.
Real quickly, I've missed having company at some county commissioners meetings recently, and although if you look at the agenda, it may look kind of boring, you never should underestimate how they nuance the agenda at times, slide things through. Look in the consent agenda. There is just a note somewhere. Feel free to contact me anytime. I'll do what I can to get you any information that you need. I view my job is to bring the duties of county government to you at the best price under the law. So saying that, I don't want to take any more time tonight, but I would love to see all the county commissioners meetings, because I view it when the citizens are there, there's sunshine. And we need sunshine at Commissioners Court. Thank you. Well, they're the second and fourth Monday.
This Monday is.
The first one is 10 a.m. Not this Monday, the next Monday is at 3. Eventually, I think there might be a commissioner that tries to move it to Thursday so that we can get the agendas on Monday and then be able to discuss the agenda through the week rather than getting the agendas on Friday and contact anybody until Monday, because it's hard to get discussion on during the weekend if you want to contact a professional about an issue. So eventually I may try to move it to the fourth. Right now, they are second and fourth Monday. So thank you.
2 minutes, Frank?
You think I can do it too?
Watch the time.
I like that you said no. My reputation precedes me. All right. I think everybody knows that I'm running against our representative in Congress, Mr. Bartlett, again this time around. Dallas County helped me get just a hair under 20% of the vote, despite being outspent 163 to 1. This time around, we're going to make things a little bit different. Joe was at the Arlington Tea Party meeting this past Thursday. He talked about the Farm Bill vote that he voted for in defense of it. If you get my weekly e-newsletter, you know that I wrote about the Farm Bill, that it came out yesterday. If you're not getting it, if you'll go to our website, we have revamped it and launched it, www.frankkuchar.com. You can go to the bottom, you can subscribe to it, it comes out every week. Keith and the other guys here have hammered on me for a couple of years now, and we've gone from 700-800 word essays down to about 300, 350 words. So, anyway, I want to tell you what he said in defense of the Farm Bill. He said it was not a good policy vote, but it was a good political vote. And here's why. He said it was a good political vote because by stripping out the food stamps out of the Farm Bill, the Democrats were mad as a wet hen, and so to a person, they voted against it. So now the Republicans can go to the election and say to the farmers, the Democrats voted against your Farm Bill. Now they're going to bring the food stamp program back in as a separate bill. They are going to put severe restrictions, you got to prove you really need them, and some other things. They're going to cut the amount back. The Democrats don't like that either, and so they're going to vote against it again. And the Republicans can now go out and say, Democrats voted against your food stamps. So it was a good political vote because it put them in a box. But if you looked at my newsletter yesterday, you saw where it also provided subsidies for wealthy companies who market overseas. It provided increased insurance, flood insurance, and other such things. A whole bunch of stuff, none of which is constitutional. So my point is this. There's no such thing as a good policy vote or a good political vote. The only vote that's a good vote is a constitutional vote. And that's what I intend to do. So if you've not signed my petition to get me on the ballot, I would appreciate you doing that tonight because it will save our campaign some money we can put to other uses. Thank you.
TJ. RC, do you want to speak? You might as well come on up and get ready. And then Dan, do you want to say anything?
You're gonna address the precinct chair thing?
Yes.
My name's TJ Favy. I'm running for state representative again. Ran in 2012 against Jim Pitts. And what I offer is some intestinal fortitude in the state house. A little bit of courage, because that's what we need more than anything at the state level is some courage. Some people that will stand up to this federal government and tell them no, draw the line in the sand and say no more. We also need some people that will speak out on the issues. We just watched a pro-life bill pass through the Texas legislature, and you did not hear one little peep from our current state representative. Am I glad that he was not in opposition to the bill? Absolutely. But I sure would have loved to hear him come out in support of the bill. And you didn't hear that either. And he claims to be pro-life, sends out information every time he runs claiming to be pro-life. And his rhetoric doesn't seem to show it. His actions don't seem to show it, because he has voted 3 times for the current Speaker of the House, Joe Strauss, who is on record as being pro-choice. And so I just think it's time for Jim to go. I'm ready to nullify some federal laws. I do believe in nullification, unlike our state senator. I do believe, like Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, that nullification is the rightful remedy, and it's the only thing we have left. It's the only thing Texas has left to protect us from the federal government. And if we don't get some lawmakers in office that will grow a spine and stand up to this federal government and nullify these unconstitutional federal laws that the 10th Amendment says that they cannot pass, then we're going to be in big, big trouble. We're going to be in more trouble than we already are in. So I would ask you to support me. Help me any way that you can. It's a grassroots campaign, and that means you. So if you would, go to tjfavy.com, consider donating some money, because money is a very, very important thing for a campaign. I hate to ask anybody for money without giving you something in your hand in return. But all I can say is that if you want to be free, please give me some money so I can help make you free. Thank you.
I'm going to make this short and sweet. My name is R.C. Ryan. I am running for Ellis County Judge. At this point, I have no idea if I'm running against anyone. We don't know if Judge Bush is going to stay in there. All I know is she kind of lost track of the 150,000 plus people that she's supposed to be responsible to. We've seen everything from raising taxes, stepping over their bounds. We had an incident a couple weeks ago with Dave Vance. Did not sit well. We just need to put things back the way they used to be. We need to make sure that the people know that they have a voice and that somebody's going to listen to them. Not sit up there and decide for themselves what they want and make it happen. Thank you.
My name is Darren Brovnick. I'm running for County Commissioner for Precinct 2. Again, I don't know if Mr. Dodson's going to be running again, but I know that Tim and I both are running for that position. So whether if Dodson runs again or not, that's a position that needs to get replaced, because that's someone who's voted to raise our taxes for Ellis County. He's one who was part behind hiding us from being able to attend all the county commissioners meetings, because he's making them at times when we're all out there working to pay them more money for their property taxes. But that's just two of the reasons I'm running. Also because I think that we need elected officials here in Ellis County who are going to be like Paul Perry and show up to events. Mr. Birdwell, TJ, who's going to be there for you almost every single time that you call on. They're going to be there to show up. And if you've got a question you want to take up with us, I know the guys who are running right now, myself included, we'd be very happy to be right there. Just say, hey, what is it that you have a problem with? Let me address it and help you out to get that solved. So Again, my name's Darren Brodnick. I'm running for County Commission for Precinct 2. And again, like TJ said, donations are very appreciated, but really just having boots on the ground and out there running a grassroots campaign, I think is the Tea Party way. So.
Hello, my name is Tim Bernking. I'm also running for County Commissioner of Precinct 2. I think Darren's probably a great guy. I don't know him very well, but we are running heads up against each other. I will also ask you for donations, but not now. I'll ask you in a few minutes. I have some cards back there on the table. Feel free to take a card, check out my website. Got a little letter on my website with more stuff coming here pretty soon. You know, there's probably nothing really that different than what's already been said about the first report. There's been a couple things that fired me up, get me to really have an interest in doing this. I kind of came back to the Tea Party in recent months after being gone for a while, and things I was hearing about the Commissioner's Court kind of set me on fire. You'll read my letter on my website that one thing that they've done is change times in the court recently. It made it harder for people to be able to show up and go speak their mind against things, about things. And that's your court, that's your opportunity to speak. That's the people's place to tell them what you want them to do. We had recently, if you don't know about this, we had like 25, 28 people show up to tell them don't change the court time, leave the court time at 6 o'clock so we can come. And they said, thanks for your effort, we changed anyway. And I think that, Mike, you'll read my letter, I got an attitude that said, hey, you know what, if I can't work 2 days a month for the county of Ellis out of, I work late, well, you know, let's have a court time at 7 o'clock so more people can make it if they want to be there. It's got to work out. And don't use excuses for security around the courthouse, too late to leave and that kind of thing. Some of the things going on are just crazy, the taxes, all this same stuff and everybody else knows about. But I will be asking for your vote. And, you know, if I could just get, I don't know, if I could get 10,000 people to call me and tell me they're going to vote for me, I won't need any money. Do this because like your friend to call me, commit to it, man, then get your money. Okay, otherwise I can sure use a few dollars to help out. Thank you much.